My name is Lucy Bennett. I'm 58 years old, and until that night, I truly believed I understood exactly who belonged inside my family and who didn't. I just never imagined the truth would reveal itself during a birthday party, with children running through the living room and candles still flickering on top of a cake. For several seconds, nobody moved. Olivia stood beside the kitchen island, holding the cake knife, confusion written across her face. My son Ethan had been smiling only moments earlier, his arm wrapped casually around Vanessa Carter's waist. But that smile disappeared the instant he heard my voice. Vanessa stared at the plate in my hands. "Why me?" she asked, with a nervous little laugh. "You prepared this slice," I replied. "It only seems fair." She glanced around the room as though expecting somebody to laugh and break the tension for her. Nobody did. Ethan stepped forward slowly. "Mom? What's going on?" "Nothing," I said softly. "Vanessa was helping with the cake. I just think she deserves the first piece." Vanessa still didn't touch the plate. Her eyes moved from me to the cake and back again, and suddenly I felt that strange heaviness I'd been carrying around her for years settling deeper into my chest. I had never trusted her completely. Not from the beginning. Everyone else loved Vanessa. She always knew exactly how to smile at the right moment, exactly when to sound sweet, exactly how to make herself appear thoughtful and harmless. But little things kept bothering me. Quiet comments about Ethan's salary, complaints about how much time he spent with family, arguments that stopped the second someone entered the room. And Ethan never saw it. Or maybe he refused to. I stayed quiet because my son loved her. That was the only reason. Until the cake. Only a few minutes earlier, the kitchen had been loud and happy. Olivia's children were begging us to light the candles already. My husband Richard had opened a bottle of wine, while Ethan joked about Olivia getting older. Vanessa volunteered to cut the first slice for me since I was closest to the table. I turned away briefly to grab clean plates from the cabinet. And when I looked back, I saw her. She stood with her back toward everyone else. Her hand moved quickly over the slice sitting on the plate. Something small and white fell from her fingers onto the frosting. Then she spread the icing carefully with a fork, like she was fixing the decoration. 2 seconds. That was all it took. Nobody noticed except me. And now, here we were. Vanessa forced another smile. "Lucy, you're being strange." "Maybe," I answered quietly. "But it's only cake." Still, she wouldn't take the plate. Ethan looked between us awkwardly. "Vanessa, just take a bite so we can move on." For the first time since I'd known her, I saw genuine fear flash across her face. Not embarrassment. Not irritation. Fear. And in that exact moment, something cold moved through me, because I realized a simple truth. If it really was just cake, she would have eaten it already. But she didn't. Richard slowly lowered his wine glass onto the counter. Olivia still held the knife in one hand, like she couldn't decide whether the party was continuing or ending. Vanessa swallowed hard. "This is ridiculous." "Exactly," I said, holding the plate slightly closer. "Then eat it." For a moment, it looked like she might actually do it. Her hand lifted halfway toward the plate before freezing completely. Then she whispered, "I don't really like frosting." Olivia frowned immediately. "Vanessa, you picked this cake yourself." Vanessa ignored her and looked directly at me instead. "Why are you doing this?" I shrugged slightly. "Because I watched you sprinkle something onto this slice a minute ago." The words landed across the kitchen like shattered glass. Ethan stared at me. "Mom, what are you talking about?" I never looked away from Vanessa. "You had your back turned," I said calmly, "but I was standing behind you." Vanessa laughed suddenly, but it sounded forced and thin. You're imagining things. Without breaking eye contact, I slowly placed the plate onto the kitchen island between us. Then let's switch. I grabbed another clean plate from beside the cake and nodded toward Olivia. Cut me a fresh slice. Olivia obeyed automatically, almost mechanically, then handed the new plate to me. I slid it toward Vanessa. Here, I said, you take this one. I'll eat the slice you prepared. Vanessa reacted instantly. Oh! The word escaped louder than she intended. Everyone stared at her. Ethan blinked slowly. Why not? Vanessa's face lost all color. Because this is insane, she snapped. Your mother is accusing me of something crazy in front of everyone. I nodded once. Then prove me wrong. Eat the slice. Even the children in the other room had gone quieter now. They could feel tension drifting out from the kitchen like smoke. Seconds passed. Then something tiny rolled across the granite countertop with a soft clicking sound. Nobody reacted at first. Olivia leaned forward slowly and picked it up. Her expression changed immediately. In her hand sat a crushed white tablet. Ethan stared at it. What is that? Vanessa answered too quickly. I don't know. You dropped it, Olivia whispered. That's not mine. Ethan turned toward me again, his voice quieter now. Mom, did you really see her put something in the cake? Yes. Vanessa crossed her arms tightly. This is unbelievable. A random pill appears and suddenly everyone thinks I'm poisoning somebody. Nobody answered. Richard stepped closer to the counter and stared at the tablet without touching it. Ethan carefully picked it up between two fingers. What is it? He asked. I said it isn't mine. Ethan ignored her. He rotated the pill toward the kitchen light. Faint letters were pressed into the surface. Olivia suddenly opened her laptop on the table and started typing quickly. One of the kids peeked nervously around the corner, but Olivia told them to return to the living room. The kitchen somehow felt smaller every second. Vanessa stepped forward suddenly. Give me that. Ethan pulled his hand back. Why? Because this is ridiculous. He kept studying the tablet. Olivia stopped typing. Then she slowly looked up from the screen. Oh my God. Ethan frowned. What? She turned the laptop toward us. It's a melopine. The name meant nothing to Ethan, but it meant everything to me. My heartbeat stumbled hard against my chest. Melopine was blood pressure medication. Dangerous blood pressure medication for someone with my medical condition. The silence that followed felt endless. Then Ethan looked back at Vanessa. Why would you have this? Vanessa opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Olivia looked toward me slowly. Mom, your doctor said medication like this could trigger a serious reaction, right? I nodded once. A year earlier, my doctor warned me certain medications could dangerously interfere with my heart condition. Ethan looked at Vanessa again, and I watched realization slowly begin breaking across his face. Were you planning to give this to my mother? Vanessa's eyes darted wildly around the room, as though searching desperately for an escape. But the slice of cake remained untouched on the counter, and the pill still sat inside Ethan's hand. The slice of cake sat inside its plastic container on the counter, while silence swallowed the kitchen whole. Ethan stared at Vanessa like he no longer recognized her. Were you planning to give this to my mother? He repeated. Vanessa folded her arms tightly across her chest. You're all overreacting. Olivia let out a disbelieving laugh. Overreacting? That pill could belong to anyone, Vanessa snapped. Maybe it fell out earlier. No one here takes that medication, Ethan said quietly. I do. Richard suddenly interrupted. Every head turned toward him. For a brief second, relief flashed across Vanessa's face so quickly she couldn't hide it. "There," she said immediately. "That explains it." But Richard kept speaking. "My doctor prescribed it last year," he said slowly. "But the bottle stays in the bathroom cabinet. I never brought any pills into the kitchen." Vanessa's expression hardened again. Ethan carefully placed the tablet back onto the counter. Then his eyes drifted toward the cake. "There's one way to settle this," he said. Vanessa's jaw tightened. "This is stupid." Without answering, Ethan walked to the drawer beside the sink and removed a small plastic storage bag. He slid the slice of cake carefully inside it. "We'll have it tested." Vanessa's head snapped toward him. "Tested for what?" "For whatever you put in it." Her laugh came out sharp and brittle. "You seriously think a lab is going to test birthday cake?" "They will." And for the first time that night, I saw genuine panic in her eyes. "You're humiliating me over nothing," she whispered. Olivia folded her arms. "Then eat it." Vanessa turned toward her. "Excuse me?" "Eat the cake," Olivia repeated, "and we'll drop the whole thing." Vanessa stared at all of us, one by one. Her breathing had changed. Faster now. Finally, she shook her head. "I'm not eating cake that's been sitting out during this circus." Ethan looked exhausted suddenly. "That's not the reason." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "So now you believe her over me?" He didn't answer immediately, but the silence itself answered for him. Then Vanessa said quietly, "I can't believe you're doing this to me." "I'm trying to understand why you won't touch the slice you prepared," Ethan replied. For a second, I thought she might explode. Instead, something stranger happened. She grabbed the plastic bag from Ethan's hand so suddenly, Olivia gasped. Vanessa ripped it open, yanked out the slice of cake, and picked up the fork beside it. "Fine," she snapped. "If this is what everybody wants." She lifted the fork toward her mouth. And right before it reached her lips, the front door opened. A voice echoed through the hallway. "Police, we need to speak with Vanessa Carter." Every person in the kitchen froze. 2 officers stepped inside the house. I immediately recognized one of them, Officer Miller. He lived only a few streets away and often attended neighborhood meetings with his wife. His eyes moved across the room before settling on Vanessa, still standing there, holding the fork. "Vanessa Carter?" he asked. Her hand slowly lowered. "Yes." Officer Miller stepped forward calmly. "We need you to come with us for questioning." Ethan looked completely stunned. "What is this about?" The second officer answered. "A pharmacy filed a report this afternoon involving prescription fraud and illegal possession of medication." Vanessa's face strained again. "That's ridiculous," she said quickly. Officer Miller's eyes shifted toward the crushed tablet sitting on the counter. "What's that?" Nobody answered immediately. Ethan pointed toward it slowly. "Imelapine." The officer looked directly at Vanessa. "Do you have a prescription for that medication?" Vanessa shook her head too fast. "No, that isn't mine." The second officer stepped closer. "We received a complaint from a local pharmacy," he explained. "Someone has been filling prescriptions using falsified insurance information and another woman's identity." Ethan stared at Vanessa in complete confusion. "What does that have to do with her?" Officer Miller answered calmly. "The pharmacy security footage matches your girlfriend." The room felt like it tilted sideways. Ethan looked at Vanessa desperately, waiting for her to deny it. She didn't. Instead, she muttered quietly, "It's just blood pressure medication." Ethan's voice cracked sharply. "Why were you stealing it?" Vanessa finally looked directly at him. "I needed it." "For what?" Her eyes flickered toward me briefly. Then back to Ethan. "I told you before," she whispered. "Your mother hates me." A chill spread through the kitchen. Ethan frowned in disbelief. "What does that have to do with anything?" Vanessa hesitated. Then she said the sentence that made Olivia cover her mouth. "I just wanted her to feel powerless for once." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Ethan stared at her as if the world beneath him had broken open. "What does that mean?" Vanessa glanced toward the cake. "It wasn't supposed to seriously hurt her," she whispered. "Just enough to scare her." The sound Ethan made after that barely sounded human. "You drugged my mother at Olivia's birthday dinner?" Vanessa immediately shook her head. "No, listen!" But he stepped backward from her. Actually stepped backward. Like her presence physically disgusted him now. Officer Miller exchanged a glance with the other officer before speaking again. "Vanessa Carter, we need you to come with us." For the first time all night, she didn't argue. She slowly placed the fork onto the counter. Then she looked at Ethan one final time. But he couldn't even meet her eyes anymore. The officers escorted her toward the front door, while the children in the living room continued talking and laughing softly, completely unaware that our entire family had just shattered in the kitchen. The door closed, and silence returned. Olivia finally sat down heavily at the table. "What just happened?" she whispered. Nobody answered. Ethan remained standing beside the counter, staring at the plastic bag containing the cake. I had never seen him look like that before. Not angry, not crying, just hollow. Finally, he sat across from me and rubbed both hands over his face. "I didn't know," he whispered, and I believed him. He looked up slowly. "How long have you thought something was wrong with her?" I hesitated only a second before telling him the truth. From the beginning. Then I explained everything I had kept buried for years. The way Vanessa slowly pushed Ethan away from old friends, the comments about money, the emotional guilt whenever he visited family without her, the strange tension hidden beneath her sweetness, the arguments that instantly stopped whenever another person entered the room. Ethan listened without interrupting. And when I finished, he looked down at the table and said quietly, "I kept making excuses for her." Later that night, the police called him again. Vanessa had confessed to illegally obtaining prescription medication using stolen identities for months. The pharmacy investigation had already been underway before Olivia's birthday dinner even started. The timing alone was what brought the officers to our house that exact night. 30 minutes later, and none of us might have discovered what Vanessa was trying to do until it was too late. 2 weeks afterward, Ethan filed for divorce. At first, Vanessa flooded his phone with apologies. Then came long emotional messages, insisting everything had been misunderstood. Then anger. Then accusations. Finally, she appeared outside his apartment one evening. Ethan never opened the door. Months passed slowly after that. One rainy evening, Ethan came over for dinner. We sat at the exact same kitchen table where Olivia's birthday had unraveled. He stared quietly into his coffee before speaking. Vanessa contacted me again. I looked at him carefully. What did she say? She wants another chance. And? He shook his head slowly. I should have listened to you earlier. I reached across the table and touched his hand gently. You needed to see the truth yourself. Ethan nodded faintly. For a moment, I truly believed the nightmare had finally ended. Then, 3 nights later, Ethan called me after midnight. His voice sounded terrified. "Mom," he whispered, "I found something in Vanessa's apartment." And the moment he told me what it was, I realized the pills and the cake had only been the beginning. I barely slept after Ethan's midnight phone call. The fear in his voice stayed with me until sunrise. The next morning, I drove straight to Vanessa's apartment building. Ethan was waiting outside near the entrance, pale and exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept at all. "What happened?" I asked the moment I stepped out of the car. Instead of answering, he handed me a small leather notebook. I frowned. "What is this?" "I found it hidden under her bed." The second I opened it, my stomach tightened. Every page contained notes. About us. About our family. Names, dates, conversations, medical information. My fingers slowly stopped on one sentence written in neat black ink. Lucy's medication changed after cardiology appointment. Possible weakness during dizziness episodes. I felt cold all over. Ethan rubbed his face with both hands. There are 6 more notebooks upstairs. For a second, I genuinely couldn't speak. We went inside together. Vanessa's apartment looked completely normal, clean, organized, quiet. The kind of place nobody would ever suspect held anything disturbing. But once Ethan opened the closet in the guest bedroom, I understood why he sounded terrified on the phone. Stacked inside were journals, folders, loose papers, and printed photographs, all centered around us. Olivia's work schedule, Richard's pharmacy prescriptions, the children's school activities, even small details about arguments we barely remembered having. I picked up one notebook carefully. Every page felt worse than the last. Ethan avoids confrontation. Easier to manipulate emotionally after conflict with mother. Another page. Lucy notices inconsistencies faster than others. Biggest obstacle. I closed the notebook immediately. My chest hurt. Ethan stood beside me, silently staring at the shelves, like he was looking at a stranger's life. "She studied us," he whispered. And he was right. Vanessa hadn't simply joined our family. She had analyzed it. Every weakness, every insecurity, every emotional crack. Suddenly, dozens of old memories rearranged themselves inside my mind. The way Vanessa always knew private information she shouldn't have known. The way arguments somehow appeared at exactly the worst moments. The way Ethan slowly drifted further from people who cared about him, while becoming more emotionally dependent on her. None of it had been accidental. Olivia arrived an hour later after Ethan called her. She walked into the apartment expecting tension. Instead, she found evidence. At first, she said nothing while flipping through the notebooks. Then, her face slowly changed. "Oh my God," she whispered. "She wrote about me, too." She showed us a page. Olivia insecure about parenting. Avoid criticism around children. Olivia looked sick. I told Vanessa that privately. I nodded slowly. She remembered everything because information was power to her. Ethan sat heavily on the couch, staring blankly ahead. "I lived with her for 4 years, he whispered. How did I not see this? Nobody answered because none of us truly knew. Love makes people explain away things they would normally question. And Vanessa understood that better than anyone. While Olivia searched through another drawer, Ethan opened a locked filing box he'd finally managed to pry open earlier that morning. Inside were financial documents, credit card statements, loan notices, collection warnings. The total debt made Ethan physically recoil. She never told me any of this. The amount was enormous. Far worse than simple spending problems. Vanessa had been drowning financially for years. I slowly sat beside him. She hid it because she knew you'd ask questions. Ethan shook his head numbly. I would have helped her. No, I said quietly. you would have tried. But helping her meant losing control over you. She couldn't risk that. He looked down at the papers silently. Then Olivia suddenly froze near the kitchen counter. "What's this?" She lifted several printed screenshots from the pile. Social media profiles. But not Vanessa's. Mine. Richard's. Even Olivia's children. Some pages had handwritten notes beside them. Richard leaves house Tuesdays at 7:15. Lucy walks alone after lunch. Olivia posts locations publicly too often. Fear crept slowly through the room. This wasn't obsession anymore. It was surveillance. Ethan looked horrified. She kept tracking all of us after the arrest. A terrible realization settled into my stomach. Vanessa hadn't lost emotional attachment to Ethan after the divorce papers. She had lost control. And she hated us for it. That evening, Ethan helped me carry several boxes of documents back to his car for his attorney. As we stood in the parking garage, he suddenly leaned against the car and covered his eyes. I really loved her. The pain in his voice almost broke me. Because, despite everything, that part was real. He had loved the version of Vanessa she carefully created for him. I touched his shoulder gently. She made sure you saw exactly what she wanted you to see. He laughed bitterly. You warned me for years. I worried, I corrected softly. There's a difference. But Ethan shook his head. No, I ignored things because admitting the truth would have destroyed the future I imagined. Neither of us spoke after that. 3 days later, Vanessa started contacting him again. At first, it was emails. Long, emotional messages about mistakes and forgiveness. Then, voice messages. Then, fake numbers. Every message sounded different. Sometimes loving. Sometimes furious. Sometimes frighteningly calm. One voicemail made Ethan physically pale when he played it for me. Vanessa's voice sounded soft, almost affectionate. I still know your mother walks alone near the lake on Thursdays, she whispered. Tell Lucy I miss our talks. A chill moved through my entire body. Ethan immediately contacted the police, but Vanessa denied everything. Since she hadn't directly threatened anyone, there was little they could legally do immediately. Still, fear settled over our family after that. Richard began insisting on driving me places. Olivia stopped posting photos online. Even the children sensed tension again. One evening, Ethan came over unexpectedly, carrying another box from Vanessa's apartment. I found more documents, he said quietly. Inside were old photographs. Not recent ones. Childhood photos. Family gatherings from years earlier. Some had notes written on the back. Strong emotional attachment between Ethan and mother. Possible weakness, family approval. I stared at the handwriting in disbelief. Vanessa had been planning emotional strategies long before Ethan ever proposed to her. Then, Ethan pulled out one final item from the box. A folded letter. He opened it slowly and began reading silently. What is it? I asked. His expression changed completely. Confusion first, then horror. Finally, heartbreak. The paper trembled slightly in his hands. It's from her ex-boyfriend. I frowned. What does it say? Ethan swallowed hard before answering. He's warning me. The room went completely still. Because suddenly we realized something terrifying. We weren't the first people Vanessa had done this to. Ethan sat at my kitchen table, holding the letter with both hands, like it might fall apart if he loosened his grip. Rain tapped softly against the windows, while silence filled the room around us. Finally, he looked up. Her ex-boyfriend wrote this almost 2 years ago. I felt uneasy immediately. Why would she keep it? I don't think she meant to. Ethan said quietly. It was hidden between financial papers. He handed me the letter. The handwriting was rushed and uneven, like someone writing while emotionally exhausted. Vanessa, I know you'll say I'm lying. You always do. But sooner or later, Ethan will see what you really are, the same way I finally did. You isolate people. You control them. You punish anyone who threatens your version of reality. I'm leaving because I'm scared of what you're becoming. For several seconds, I couldn't move. The words felt too familiar. Too accurate. Ethan stared blankly at the table. He described everything. I folded the letter carefully and set it down. Did she ever talk about him? She said he was abusive, Ethan answered softly. She said he ruined her trust. I closed my eyes briefly. That was another thing manipulators understood well. If they controlled the story first, nobody questioned it later. Over the following weeks, more information surfaced through Vanessa's legal investigation. There were other false insurance claims, other stolen identities, hidden accounts Ethan never knew existed. Even worse, detectives quietly revealed they had spoken with previous employers who described Vanessa as charming at first, but deeply controlling once relationships formed. Every new discovery hurt Ethan all over again. One night, he admitted something that stayed with me long afterward. I don't even know which parts of our relationship were real anymore. I answered honestly. Some of it probably was real to her, in her own way. He looked at me tiredly. Does that make it better or worse? I didn't have an answer. The voicemail about my walking routine still lingered heavily in everyone's minds. Even though Vanessa was under legal supervision while awaiting court proceedings, none of us fully relaxed. I changed my routines. Richard insisted on accompanying me almost everywhere. Olivia became fiercely protective of the children, and Ethan carried guilt that seemed impossible to put down. One evening, he arrived at my house unexpectedly with takeout containers in his hands. I figured neither of us wanted to cook, he said. We sat together at the kitchen table, quietly eating, while the television murmured faintly in the background. The same kitchen table. The same room where everything had exploded months earlier. Ethan stared toward the counter for a long moment before speaking. I keep replaying that night in my head. I waited quietly. I keep thinking about how close it came. The truth of that settled painfully between us. If I hadn't looked up while grabbing plates, if Vanessa hadn't dropped the pill, if the police investigation had arrived 30 minutes later, our lives could have unfolded very differently. Ethan lowered his eyes. I was supposed to protect you. You didn't know, I said gently. But I should have. I shook my head slowly. Love makes people hopeful. Sometimes too hopeful. He leaned back in the chair, exhausted. I ignored every warning sign because I wanted the relationship to work. Every time something felt wrong, I explained it away. I smiled sadly. That's what good people do. They search for reasons to forgive. For the first time in months, Ethan's expression softened slightly. Then he asked something quietly. When did you realize she was dangerous? I thought carefully before answering. Not dangerous, I said. Unstable. There's a difference. He frowned slightly. I think part of her genuinely wanted love and stability, but another part needed control more than love. And eventually, control became stronger. Ethan absorbed that silently. Weeks later, Vanessa finally accepted a plea agreement connected to the fraud charges. Part of the arrangement included mandatory psychiatric evaluation and supervised restrictions regarding contact with our family. When the legal process finally ended, I expected relief. Instead, I mostly felt tired. An entire chapter of our lives had disappeared beneath suspicion, manipulation, and fear. But slowly, things began healing. Olivia's children became loud and carefree again during family dinners. Richard stopped checking the locks 3 times every night. Ethan gradually reconnected with old friends Vanessa had pushed away years earlier. Little by little, life returned. Nearly a year after Olivia's birthday dinner, we gathered again at our house for another celebration. Same kitchen, same table, different feeling entirely. At one point, Ethan stood beside me while I sliced cake for the children. Then he said quietly, "You know something strange?" "What?" "I still remember exactly how Vanessa looked when you told her to take the first bite. I looked down at the knife in my hands." "So do I." He shook his head faintly. "That was the first moment I saw fear in her instead of confidence." Neither of us spoke for a second. Then Ethan smiled sadly. "I should have listened to you years earlier." I set the knife down gently and touched his arm. "No," I said softly. "You needed to see the truth yourself. Nobody could have forced you to believe it before you were ready." He nodded slowly, and for the first time since everything happened, I could finally see peace returning to him. Later that night, after everyone left, I stayed alone in the kitchen cleaning plates while the house grew quiet around me. I found myself staring at the exact spot where Vanessa dropped the pill onto the counter. Such a tiny thing. Such a tiny sound. Yet, it changed everything. Sometimes I still think about how close we came to never knowing the truth at all. If I had turned away 1 second longer while reaching for those plates, if I had ignored the uneasy feeling I carried around Vanessa from the beginning, Ethan might still be trapped inside a life built on manipulation and fear. And I might never have realized how dangerous pretending can become when someone cares more about control than love. Instead, the truth revealed itself in front of all of us before Vanessa ever managed to take the first bite herself.